All right, we're doing a very late night scene here, but these pre-printed papers can come together pretty fast, so I think I could squeeze one more in tonight in quick order. We'll see. Okay, we're going to try the line paper like this. I don't remember stamping on line paper before. I might have sometime in the past, but I'm not quite sure, but we'll see how this goes. Okay, I have printed, or not printed, but used some black ink on here, and I'm going back in with my pens and trying to add a little bit more variety of color just inherent in the impression here, okay? I haven't done this in a long time, so I don't even know if I'm doing it correctly. If there's a correct way to do it or not. Let me see. After you go lighter into dark, you should kind of wipe off your pen a little bit. Okay, so there are some browns and some reds in here and black, that initial print. And okay, right around here, I'm going to wipe some of the, I don't know if I need to wipe off the ink off there. I'll just go like this. Let me see, let's stamp this a little bit lower so I can do a quote stamp if I want to on here. Let's go about right here. Let's see how this looks. I'm going for more of like an isolated object here than like a full integrated scene in here. I'll integrate it a little bit, but I won't do it too much. Okay, so see, there's that right there. We might need to integrate a little bit more. I don't know, that looks a little bit too plain to me, so let's ink up a little bit more this side, and I'll figure out what to do over here. The thing is that you can't go with too much around that because it will obscure this in here, so you need to keep it kind of lighter in tone over there. Let's see. Let me see if I could do this here. Okay, I've inked up right here. I'm going to blot it off like that, okay? Now, I'm really going to wipe off a good portion of this over in this direction, okay? And we'll see if I can just get a little hint of this going into this area here without kind of obscuring what I have down here too much. Let's see if I have what it takes to get that done right there. Okay, maybe I took off too much in there, but that doesn't look too bad. Let's get a little bit more of... Let's leave it as is. Okay. That's easy enough. Okay, now I was thinking about using a little bit of foreground down here, like this, and then I'll use some more additional leaves in here. The whole idea of this scene right here is to do a very quick one, or an attempt to be very quick. Okay. Oops, I didn't ink up enough over here. I'm being rather haphazard about this. Okay, let's get some multi-toned leaves in here. I think this is where, now see, there's some really light leaves right here, but I think I'm going to incorporate some darker that. That. And I'll put some other darker ones right over the lighter ones, right in here. Just to kind of frame things off a little bit. All right, let's see what we can do here with a little bit more varied tone here. This is called kind of the watercolor look or technique. So you color it up and then go into it with another tone. You don't want to do it everywhere. You want it to be, your impression to be varied. You can kind of get a little bit of the gist of how it's going to look just based on the coloring that you can see. I know it's kind of hard to tell on camera here. And I'm not quite sure how it's going to come out either. But let's see. Now come on over here. I'm trying to think of a way to get kind of a good portion of it. That. And dare I go for another impression of it? Let's ink up again. I don't think a second, impression over here would have shown up at all, so here we'll vary it a little bit. When I go with a dark tone, I blend out a little bit more with the lighter color again over the dark. And something like that. So it's a little bit more balanced, I guess. Okay. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to do my animal in here yet. Might as well. We'll go with our moose. Keeping it simple. Just going with black. And let's transition that shadow area a little bit, where it's not just straight black. I'll have it transition a little bit from a darker black to hopefully a lighter gray down below. And let's go for a little textural integration here. All right, so see, what I mean by that is there's a hard edge where this image ends and whatever the line paper begins in this case. So what we'll do is we'll add some of this right down in here into the water area, the water's edge. And see, I'm going for these lighter impressions down here too, so it's not just a black, textured area like that. It's gray as well. And then we'll add that around our moose as well. And what that usually represents is that the water here is a little bit more shallow. Maybe it gets a little bit deeper in here. Maybe we can add a little bit over here as well. And see, even that little texture in there, it kind of fills in this area where that just ended abruptly, like the edge right in here. So it carries it out and, I don't know, just, it fills out that space, and it doesn't have to be anything, harsh or really bold. It just does it in a very subtle way like that. Okay, so let's try some of these fall tones in here. Let's start off with a lighter tone, actually. There's some trees right back in here, right back in here, and right down here. I usually do this grass, kind of a greenish tinge, just for some variation. In reality, it would be fall colored too, with yellows and oranges, probably reds maybe. But I like to bring in, introduce a little bit of a different color underneath the trees right in there. Usually, well, here, let's add a little bit of base coat of some of this yellow just for continuity and harmony. But I'll show you what I'm talking about. And then where these other trees are in here, let's just bring in a little bit of this tone in there, like about like that. And then see, this right around in here, if it was this dark in the background, we wouldn't be able to see these, so it just kind of blends into them, or whatever, not blends, but transitions into them just very subtly here, okay? Here's just some reflections down here, so we can bring in some of these tones from up top into this lower section. That was just yellow. Now let's go in with some orange. Don't cover up all of your yellow. Just so you have some orange and yellow in there. Maybe with the darker colors, you kind of hit more of the shadow areas. So there's shadow areas within these trees. Like here's the lighter area right here, and here's the darker area. It goes light, dark, light, dark. So with the orange, I'm kind of hitting these darker areas. Then I'll get to a red, and I'll follow that same type of coloring, but also kind of a shading strategy. All right, so there's orange right there, and remember there was some red inherently in the impression right there, so we'll just kind of blend that out. It's not really integrated very well. So I'll go in and I'll just kind of spread that red out a little bit. You can probably use a little bit more orange in there too. You can just kind of go back and forth a little bit. You see that right there? I do think it needs a little bit of a different hue just for some variety. So I'll go with the green here down in this grassy area. It doesn't have to be like a, big, huge, distinct color scheme change, but I do think that adds just a little bit more variety, and it separates kind of ground cover from the trees. Something like that. Okay. Now, let's go back to the lightest of tones, which is that orange or yellowish, golden yellow, I guess. And I can see how things are looking with that. And I think I can go in with a little bit more of a brighter addition to those trees. So I'm going with a little bit more pressure, or just not too much more pressure, but a little bit more. So I'm applying, a little bit of a thicker application of this pencil, waxy pencil, and I'm getting a brighter tone in there. So I found out that I could use white pigment ink on here pretty well, have it fairly integrated, so I'm going with a little bit more of a brighter tone in there than probably what I would if I couldn't use the white pigment ink, because the white pigment ink will soften up certain areas in here if I've gone a little bit too hard and bright with that yellow, for example. What I'm getting at here is this is kind of like it's a washy kind of, it's supposed to be an aged looking paper, so sometimes I don't want to go too bright with the tones because it's supposed to look more, aged and antiqued looking, weathered, okay, this paper. So you really wouldn't have like bright tones. They're supposed to be kind of a little bit more washed out. All right, so I'm going with that. And here's a brown, so you can do a little bit more shading in here if you want to. Some shadow work. And again, I'm just kind of adding some tone in the darker areas that are inherently darker in the imagery. So you can see like underneath the trees, there's these dark areas right in here. It's kind of a little bit harder to see it here because it's stamped out fairly light. But just in general, you can also kind of make things up, and create shadows where maybe there aren't any inherently, but you just kind of add them in. Down here in the water too. Now I'm not adding like too blue of a water or something like that. I guess you could, but it's just supposed to be more of this kind of autumn color scheme in here. Just overall. Maybe it's more like, I don't know, like a deep past sunset or something like that, where the colors are, in the sky are influencing, what you see in the water. So, golden tones or something. All right, now let's see. Let's add in a little bit of let me see if I can get a little bit of this green. Well, maybe not that one. It's like a fluorescent green. I'm in some of this green paint pen here. Let me shake up my paint pens, get those nice and mixed up. Okay, just took about 10 seconds to shake these up thoroughly. I haven't been using a lot of my paint pens, so got to get them kind of flowing again. There's some like dried paint sometimes on the tips or in the tips. All right, give me a second. Okay, we got it flowing here. Some like little glistening green little dots in here. Everything's kind of soft in here. This gives it a little bit of sharpness. I don't want it too sharp though, because again, this is kind of this aged look, and I'm not going for something like super intense in here. There's a little bit of a tan. And here, let's try some yellow in here. There isn't yellow inherent in the paper, but these fall tones, if I use this kind of yellow, kind of sparingly, it kind of picks up that glistening shimmer look, while still being fairly subtle. Okay. And I like the way the white looked in here. It'll kind of stand out a little bit awkwardly until I put in the white pigment ink. I mean, I could put in the white pigment ink first, and that kind of leads me, a little bit, directs me, I guess, in terms of, maybe how much or how little of this white to use. But I think we can just go in there and do it. I have confidence in the paper, the white pigment ink ability of this paper. Sometimes it looks kind of awkward, but this paper, I don't know. I guess it's light enough, and the pigment ink is translucent enough where it looks fine. Okay, now see this shoreline right here is this little secret that I do. I kind of add a little bit of this highlighting around the shoreline, and it makes that shoreline kind of stand out a little bit. It's in the design itself. See that line right there? So a lot of times it gets colored in, so you just go in there and see this shoreline right here, that sand line. And you just go and reintroduce it. Now, you can't really see these tree trunks in here. It's just kind of, a little bit of a mess. So what you can do is you can kind of add these white trunks like this. You can do it on one side of the trunk or something like that, but you can see how those trunks like that, it really gives that area some stability, having those trunks in there. And then what you do is you go in and you can add it to those reflections like that, and see how effective it is right in there. I love doing that. It's really fun to add in those little trunks. It just, I don't know, it makes those area objects, like I said, it gives them stability by having some nice, it's not just like, these aren't just some like big bushes in the background or something like that. So having those forms in there really helps. Little sparkles in the water, maybe like that. And what I did on my other one, first test on this paper, I gave little dots on my branches like that. It represents like dew or something like that. Now, let's go in and let's see what we can do with some white pigment ink in here. there's an area that's lighter right there. This area in here is lighter. Okay, so see where this ends abruptly, and I had that tree right over here. I'm going to have it like this fog is coming in from that direction. And we'll see how that looks. I like putting that fog kind of like underneath the trees, a little bit like that. I don't do it over all of them. So let's just stop it right there, and then we'll have this area kind of as is. But see this area in the background, it really looks good with a little bit of an introduction of fog right back in here. Fog, mist. And see, doesn't it push that area in the background farther back like that? And it also gives lighting and kind of a textural difference to the piece. So we have some right here, some. So soft and light, crisp and darker, softer and lighter, crisper and darker. And of course it's at just on the bottom end of it. I mean, you could go up top there if you wanted to, but again, I like a little bit more contrast. So I tend to leave it as is. Some down here, and let's play around with this paper in the background. I didn't do this on my last one, but see, I can make some of these leaves kind of a little bit lighter like that, like it's, you know, in the light, or maybe this tree right here gets a little bit of that treatment, like right in the middle like that. Let's have this overhanging limb here a little bit bottom lit. So it's a little bit lighter right there and softer. I mean, you can do it all over the place. You know, here's this moose here. And see this legs right here are kind of in the mist. And that fog, it kind of makes that moose kind of glow like that. And you can see I've tapped this like 20 times. That's just the amount of ink there. So it's always about the control of ink. You just want to have very little ink on your applicator, where it's almost like applying like a light powder to it or something. Powder to your objects. A little bit more mist down in here. And here I'm wiping some of it off, or I might have applied too much. Let's see, let's play around a little bit in here. Yeah, see something like that. Okay, now I'm looking at something that I kind of forgot to do, and here's this rock right here. See how everything else is kind of rendered and more rounded looking. So what you do is you can go in here and apply a little bit of this in the shadows. This is just one color here. And we can get a little bit more variety with multiple tones. So it's not just like thinking, what color would this rock be? It's like kind of more like what combinations of color can you put on here? So I'm applying this green, like, you know, this rock might have some lichen on it or moss or something like that. And see, it kind of makes a relationship with this background area in terms of the tones. And I'll go a little bit darker down here. So we're going with 3 colors. But see, I'm leaving some of my rock tops a little bit light. So it looks like the light is hitting it. Now, if I end up coloring the whole thing and it's like, oh, I should have left them a little bit lighter, you can always bring in some of that acrylic paint pen and lighten it up a little bit up here with some dots or something of that sort. All right, let's see if we can find some kind of interesting quote to put right up here. I mean, we can just leave it as is, but I think it'd be interesting with a quote stamp. Or, you know, this is fall, so we can put some like migrating birds up there. That might be pretty good. I don't know how a quote stamp would look down here, but we have these lines up here, so it would be open for word form. Maybe I should use the same quote stamp that I used on my previous scene. Let me see. All right, I think I'm going to go with the same quote stamp. It fits it thematically, but it also just kind of fits up there dimensionally. All right, forgive my head. Okay, I think I'm going to make a quick impression of this. Maybe, you know, if it comes out a little bit lighter in tone, that'll be fine. I think it looks pretty good. Here we go with the end piece like that. I think it'll be pretty good. I'm just kind of, I have this piece right here, this frame. I'm just showing you how I would probably frame it up. There's another scene that I did before, but I like it with this gold perimeter around here like that. So just a mirrored gold cardstock. Put it up at an angle so it doesn't get too much of a glare for you to see. And another pretty quick scene, so half an hour or so. You know, we have this swag here, and basically one image right there and one image down here, and then you just have a little bit of peripheral types of things, which you don't have to add. I think it kind of close things off a little bit more on this side, but you know, you can also do other teams like that, you know, other lead-in things over here, have objects kind of facing in. I did cap it off with those leaves over there, but I'll try some different things going forward here. But again, some pretty, you know, these papers make pretty quick work of some different scenarios like that. I think the lines in here kind of, you know, are an interesting graphic statement. I need to integrate them a little bit more with, you know, maybe another scene that has like some words like here, you know, maybe it might be a quote stamp, but maybe like a word stamp up there, word stamp down here, another word stamp over here, something of that sort. So you're really kind of utilizing the that graphic element for kind of its intended purposes, which would be, you know, writing. It'd be kind of interesting too if you do a piece but leave a little bit more space open. I didn't think about this, where, you know, you can do some handwriting on there. Maybe you can write a quote or something like that into those spots. I don't know. Could be interesting. Anyways, hope you liked the experiment. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comments section.